this video we're going to discuss a few points in a bit more detail than has been mentioned before, and probably go over some stuff that we haven't done. First thing I want to really do is I'll just mention something here that it's important because it can confuse you. There is there's often a French translation that comes first, like that. Units retirés de jeu, units removed from the play, which is not quite an exact. But these can be confusing. They confuse me in a certain few places, like here where you saw PR/RP. For about 30 minutes I was thinking, what on earth is a PR? I know that RP is a replacement point, but what's a PR? And then it suddenly dawned on me, oh, that's point of replacement or something, or whatever it is in French. So just remember that. And sometimes there isn't a translation. I can't think of an example at the moment, but I have seen things on the boards or setups. Oh yeah, one of the ones is the game markers. It's like got they're on the campaign setups, but there's not a translation, so it'll say carte marquée or something like that, and it'll say case 0, and that means stick it in the, like for that one, that would mean stick that marker in the 0 space. That marker, sorry, so you can see it in the 0 space on the map. So just mentioning that. All right, we'll look at replacements for Russia first. Now, the Russian replacement system is quite complicated. First thing, when you're drawing Soviet first, the first thing you've got to do is you've got your theatre of operations. You'll have to excuse me zooming the camera around a bit, but it's important that we see these. Those theatre of operations markers there, there's 4 of them, as I've already mentioned. What you've got to do is assign a priority theatre of operations and a secondary. Now, don't fall for the idea that the secondary is the next one down from the priority. It isn't. There's a priority theory of operation, then there's normal theatres of operations, then there's the secondary one. So the secondary one is basically a front where you're not gonna supply any supports at all to it. If you're launching a large offensive, things are totally different, but you've got to have 6 support markers already in your reserve. Like, so each actual area has its own available supports for each theatre of operations. So you can only have a maximum of 6 of these at the end of a support allocation phase, but you need 6 at the start before you can launch a large offensive. Next thing you do is for each of your TOs, except for the secondary, you roll 2 dice, 2d6s, and then you apply these variables here, and it gives you a result. You then halve the result and round down, and that's the number of support markers that can go to each theatre of operations. There is actually a support marker. No, can that one. Right. Just let me get my mind together here. Right, next thing. For your replacements, already mentioned it, the Russian replacements come from these little markers here. So that's saying that's 4 Russian replacements, or Soviet Polish allies, or Soviet Czechoslovak allies. Okay, return. Now, if we look at the Germans is it's quite different. You've got this Führer track here, which is, I'm trying to get it without any glare. This is a really, really interesting mechanic. I've never seen anything quite like it in my life. What you have, when you start the game, you've got your maximum satisfaction for Hitler, and you've got your minimum satisfaction for Hitler. Okay, now each turn this track will move. It moves down one anyway normally, but there are various other things that cause the track to move. It can never move up, at least not as far as I'm concerned, but someone might correct me on that. But if you notice on these tracks, it says how many replacements you get. Notice that one only says the French, it doesn't say RP, it says PR, it doesn't say PR/RP. And you've got support, and you get 3 support markers. Now, every time this track reaches the bottom down to 0, you get a negative effect on the Germans, i.e. it's like you lose things like all your hoarded support counters are lost, etc. I'm not going to go through it in full detail, but the next thing that happens is you go up here and then you move that one down 1. So this maximum satisfaction is creeping down the track, and as you're noticing, the war weary, if you look at this carefully, you'll see the war weariness of the Germans is increasing all the time. And ultimately, as these tracks go down, you're going to get less and less spaces. Say this track had already reached 0 4 times, your maximum satisfaction will be that. So when it reaches the 4th time, your current Hitler approval will start there and start going down. So you can see that the Germans are going to get more and more desperate for replacements and support as time goes on. Another thing to look at is rail. Even though Operation Bagration, you start with a rail capacity of 2, it goes up to 6 from then on, and there's marked on this track up here. I've already discussed that, but basically any division equivalent costs you 1 rail point to move, and if you've got an armoured division, it will cost you 2 rail points. Another thing to remember, you can get an extra 2 rail points so long as the units are only moved in rail lines in Germany, Slovakia, Hungary and Romania. Now, a rail line with these light grey ones, as the dark black ones are primary roads. Another little track you see here, which is the end of the right track. This is triggered really as the Germans start losing strategic cities or strategic hexes controlled by the German player. Now there's a maximum of 6 on the board, which I can't give you the names of them. They are stated quite clearly in the rules, and as you start losing them, you're moving along this track. And as Germany gets more and more desperate, it will start using these like Reich support markers, which are really last ditch stuff like Volkssturm units armed with Panzerfaust or whatever. This bit here, support markers drawn after dismissal. Basically, when your track goes down to 0 over here, that's counted as a dismissal. So this is saying that as things get more and more desperate, you're getting hardly any support markers coming after your track goes to 0 and moves in one like this. If you're near the end of the line, you're not getting many support markers at all, up until a stage where you actually get 0 at one point. Another thing we haven't discussed is Stavka. You see this Stavka box, that's the Russian strategic reserve. Now, normally what you do with this, in the Stavka phase, you roll a dice, and then you can say, depending on whether you're the priority theatre of operations, a normal theatre, or a secondary theatre, you can draw up to that many units from the Stavka reserve. Notice that infantry always come out in their standard side. We don't come out reinforced. There is actually a support marker that allows you to always take the maximum. So say you were a normal theatre, you don't have to roll the dice anymore. You'd always get 3 in your TO theatres. Okay, that'll do for the moment. That's quite a lot of stuff. I don't know. I'll just mention weather. There's a weather track here, and basically pretty standard. Based on what month it is and what die roll you get, it affects your ground movement. If you've got mud and snow are going to cause problems to you, and you can become overcast, which stops you from flying. I can't, at this stage, I'm not going to go into the specifics of what bad weather does to you, but just bear that in mind. Right, as I say, that's a lot, so